RustDesk just fixed the biggest problem holding back Linux in corporate environments worldwide. If you've never heard of RustDesk, here's what matters. It's the open-source alternative to TeamViewer or AnyDesk, a free tool that lets you access one computer from another anywhere on Earth. Think of it like having an invisible second pair of hands at someone else's keyboard, but completely private and under your control, not funneled through some cloud company's servers. For years, Linux users and especially system administrators have relied on RustDesk to work remotely, but something massive just happened. Linux is switching to Wayland, a completely new display system that's replacing 30-year-old technology. And when Wayland arrived, RustDesk hit a wall. Unattended access, the ability to remote into a machine without someone sitting there clicking except at the remote end, suddenly stopped working on Wayland. It was broken. It was fragile. DevOps teams had to jump through hoops or abandon remote work entirely. Today, that changes. RustDesk's latest release finally solved it. But here's where it gets interesting. This fix affects not just a niche group of Linux enthusiasts, but potentially millions of developers and enterprise teams who thought Linux remote access was permanently impossible. To understand why this fix is massive, you need to know why Linux ditched a 30-year-old system in the first place. X11, that's the display protocol Linux has used since 1987, is ancient. It was designed when networks were slow and security wasn't a priority. Modern graphics are incomprehensible to X11. Multi-monitor setups are a nightmare. Security vulnerabilities come up constantly because the entire display system runs with root privileges by default. Wayland is Linux's answer. It's built from scratch for modern graphics, better security isolation, and cleaner code. Fedora switched in 2024. Ubuntu GNOME switched last year. Within the next 2 years, virtually every major Linux distribution will default to Wayland. The change is inevitable. But here's the collision. Software built for X11 suddenly doesn't work on Wayland. Tools from the last decade, VNC clients, remote access utilities, even some system tools, they were all designed for X11's architecture. When Wayland arrived, millions of Linux users discovered that critical tools simply refused to work, and Wayland's better security actually made some of those old workarounds impossible. This wasn't a bug, it was a feature. Wayland was correctly blocking unsafe operations that X11 let slide for decades. But the outcome? Enterprise Linux adoption stalled. Developers couldn't work remotely, and the tools that made Linux possible in business suddenly didn't work anymore. Let's define the problem precisely. Unattended access means you can remote into a machine without anyone sitting there physically clicking yes, let this person in. It's critical infrastructure. Your overnight CI/CD pipeline deploys to 500 servers unattended. Your support team fixes a developer's workstation at 2 a.m. without waking them up. A DevOps engineer runs database backups on every box in your fleet while asleep. All unattended. All require remote access without a human at the keyboard. X11 made this possible because, and this is the kicker, X11's security model was fundamentally broken. Any application running in an X11 session could spy on any other application, steal your keystrokes, inject fake input. So when a remote access tool showed up and said, hey, I need to send keyboard and mouse input to this machine, X11 just shrugged and allowed it. Wayland fixes that security hole. Each application runs in its own isolated sandbox. You can't inject input into a session you didn't start. It's better security, objectively, but it makes unattended access nearly impossible without explicitly telling Wayland yes. This remote tool is allowed to control the keyboard and mouse. That's a permission that didn't even exist in X11 because it couldn't exist. There was no security model to protect against misuse. Wayland forced the question, how do you grant unattended access while keeping the system secure? And the answer, until RustDesk fixed it, was you can't, not really. This is why the fix matters. Picture this. It's midnight in San Francisco. A DevOps engineer in Berlin needs to deploy a critical patch to 500 Wayland-based workstations across the company's offices. With X11, this was trivial. RustDesk could just remote in unattended and run the deployment. With Wayland before today, the engineer had 2 options: fly to every office and sit at every desk, or wake up 500 employees at midnight to click Allow Remote Access. neither works. Or imagine this. A support technician in India needs to fix a developer's machine in New York to recover corrupted files. The developer's asleep. With X11, RustDesk remote access done in 2 minutes. With Wayland, the technician's stuck. They can't work. The problem compounds. Right now, roughly 5 million Fedora 40 users are on Wayland. Ubuntu GNOME has pushed maybe 10 million more onto Wayland in the last year. And every single one of those people, if they need remote access, has been locked out. Add system administrators managing cloud infrastructure, DevOps teams running automated deployments, build servers needing headless access, and you're looking at scenarios affecting millions of people daily. Every single one of these use cases becomes impossible the moment you switch to Wayland, unless the tool you're using has been updated to work with Wayland's security model, which, until today, almost no tool had. So why does RustDesk matter more than, say, TeamViewer or any desk rolling out their own Wayland fix? 3 reasons, and they are fundamental. First, RustDesk is open source. You can see exactly how it works. If there's a security problem, someone in the community spots it and fixes it. Compare that to TeamViewer or any desk, proprietary black boxes where a security flaw might sit hidden for months. Second, RustDesk is free, and it doesn't relay your connection through someone else's servers. When you use TeamViewer, your data flows through TeamViewer's infrastructure. They could theoretically intercept it. RustDesk connects peer-to-peer directly from your machine to the remote machine. Nobody in the middle, no monthly fees, no vendor lock-in. Third, and this is crucial for enterprises, RustDesk is community-maintained. You're not at the mercy of a for-profit company's roadmap. When developers needed Wayland support, the community started working on it immediately, not waiting for the next quarterly release. Now, VNC exists too, an ancient but incredibly lightweight remote access protocol, but VNC hasn't been updated seriously in years, and its Wayland support is even more limited than RustDesk's was. SSH gives you command line access, but not GUI control. And commercial tools like Chrome Remote Desktop charge monthly and lock you into cloud infrastructure. RustDesk's win. It's the only tool that solved Wayland unattended access properly, completely free, completely open, and with 0 middlemen. Here's what just shifted. For the past 2 years, enterprise adoption of Linux workstations stalled. Why? Because companies couldn't manage Linux machines remotely. You can't run a business where half your workforce can't be accessed by it. So companies stuck with Windows or Mac, even though Linux is fundamentally more secure and costs nothing to license. RustDesk's Wayland fix removes that friction entirely. Suddenly, Linux workstations become manageable again. Overnight deployments work. Remote support works. Unattended automation works. This opens the door to Linux desktop adoption in companies that were never going to move without it. More broadly, it signals that the Wayland ecosystem is maturing. For years, people complained that Wayland wasn't ready. Too many tools were broken. Too much X11 legacy code needed replacing. Today, the big ones are falling into place. VNC is next. SSH with GUI support is coming. Slowly, tools are being updated to embrace Wayland's security model instead of fighting it. There's also a security angle worth noting. The old hacks, tools that somehow forced unattended access on Wayland without permission, they'd be dangerous. RustDesk's solution is proper integration. Wayland explicitly grants permissions to RustDesk. This is actually better security than X11 ever provided. Because now there's an audit trail. An administrator can see exactly which tools have remote access rights and revoke them instantly. If you're running Wayland and want to try this right now, here's what you do. First, update RustDesk to the latest version. You need at least the build shipping this month. Earlier versions won't have the Wayland fix. Open your RustDesk client and go to Settings. Look for the Unattended Access or Security section. You'll see a toggle for unattended mode. Enable it. Now RustDesk will ask for permissions. On Wayland, this is where the magic happens. You'll get a prompt asking whether RustDesk can access input devices and control the keyboard and mouse. Click Yes. That's it. Those permissions are what X11 never had, a security layer that actually tracks who's allowed to control your machine remotely. Once enabled, test it. Open RustDesk from another machine and try to connect. You should be able to remote in completely unattended, no dialogues, no clicking except just seamless access like you had with X11. If you're checking what desktop you're actually running, open a terminal and type echo $xdg session type. If it says Wayland, you're on Wayland. If it says X11, you're still on the old system. For most people on modern Fedora or Ubuntu GNOME, Wayland is the default. Some people still choose X11 during login. If you want to test the Wayland version of RustDesk, make sure you select Wayland at the login screen first. The performance should match or exceed what you had on X11, and the security is noticeably better. If you're a developer or sysadmin who uses Linux remotely, today changed your life. You can update RustDesk, enable unattended access, and your job just became significantly easier. For enterprise teams managing Linux workstations, this is the green light you've been waiting for. Linux desktop adoption just became practical again. But there's a bigger picture. This is evidence that Wayland adoption, which looked scary 2 years ago, is actually working. Tools are being updated. Security models are being integrated properly. The Linux ecosystem is evolving, not breaking. You'll see other tools follow suit: VNC clients, remote administration tools, system management platforms. The Wayland transition looked like it might fragment Linux for a moment. It didn't. It matured it. One last thing to watch. If you maintain or develop any other remote access tools, Wayland support just became table stakes. RustDesk proved it's possible to do it properly, securely, without hacks or workarounds. That means every competing project is under pressure to catch up. The entire remote work toolchain is about to get better for Linux. Follow RustDesk's development if you want to stay ahead of these changes. Report bugs, try the latest builds. The fact that an open source project solved a problem that's been holding back Linux adoption for 2 years, that's the real story here. That's the power of community-driven development.